Many Excel users initially overlook the ability of Excel to handle information related to dates and times. Let's just start with a simple example here. In column B, in this worksheet called Dates and Times, we've got a starting date and an ending date. Maybe this represents a project, long-term project for sure. Maybe it's a construction project. How many days have elapsed? And of course, we can put in any dates we want here. And by the way, the entire date system in Excel actually begins January 1st, 1900 and goes until the year 10,000. But a simple subtraction of these two cells. Now, if you recognize the dates actually have a value, and you wouldn't necessarily know that at first, January 1st, 1900 has the value 1, January 2nd, the value 2, and so on. When you enter a date, a value is being stored there. So when we subtract dates, we start by typing equal, and we use the later date first minus the earlier date. This example here. How many days have elapsed here? 2,320. Try that with different dates. You'll be surprised how easy and fast it works. Now, of course, that includes weekends, and that's what we want it to. And we'll show you a workaround a bit later on how you can tabulate just working days here as well. We can also use date math in a different way. We installed a particular item on the 15th of May in 2009. It's got a lifespan of 1,500 days. When will the product life end? In this case, equal the starting date here plus 1,500. There we are. June 23rd in 2013. And of course, going the other way, 90 days ago, if this is the current date, or whatever the date might be, 90 days prior to that, equal this date minus 90. And if you need to use today's date in the calculation, and that could mean that you're setting up a dynamic total, you can use a function called today, equal today, and you need only type left parenthesis, press enter. At the time of recording, this is the date, 11/10/2010. If I close this file and save it, open it tomorrow, it's going to say 11/11 and so on. It is dynamic. It's the today function. There's also a function called now, equal NOW. And here too, you might use this in certain circumstances. We need only type the opening parenthesis and then enter. Here, the typical display gives us the time along with the date. We can choose to leave it in this format here, the way it looks, or right-click and perhaps change the format to be either a time or a date using some of the many built-in formats available here. We can also work with times as well. In column F, there's a check-in time, a check-out time. Notice that these presume, based on what we're seeing here, they're on the same day, equal check-out time minus check-in time. In other words, a later time minus an earlier time. How much time has elapsed? Now, strangely enough, when you do subtract times, the answer at first throws you a little bit. We really don't want to see the AM there. The answer actually is correct, but it is a little bit unsettling, and we wouldn't leave it in that form. So here, too, a quick right-click format cells. And in the time category here, the second one, not obvious at first perhaps, but this does not include the AM, PM. We'd get this kind of result here. And of course, if this did go beyond 12 hours, if we're talking about a different situation where maybe this is initially 2:13 a.m., then the time elapsed here is 14 hours and 28 minutes. And although we can't literally use these in a calculation, we can calculate the difference for these kinds of entries that cross multiple days. And here you got to do a little bit of work, but let's say we put in the date first, 11/18/10, space. And how do we type 6 p.m.? We could type 6:00 p.m. We could put in 18:00, and believe it or not, even 6p, enter. And here, similarly, 11/20/10, space, and just for variations here, I'm going to type in 15:00. That's 3 p.m. Different way to do it, that's going to work fine too. Then we can subtract these. So equal the later time minus the earlier time. So looking ahead here, that's about 2 days or so, but what kind of an answer are we going to get? You might get something like this, and this is going to throw you a little bit too. What do we need to do here? We need to format this as a time using 1330. Now, that's surprising too, isn't it? Aren't we crossing 2 days? Surely it's more than 21 hours. What you wouldn't know necessarily here and what you have to use in certain situations, if you're dealing with times of day and differences, if those differences exceed 24 hours or 48 hours or 72 hours and so on, you'll get a multiple or a leftover amount. And the format we need for this, as I suggested, not so obvious, is this one here that has a 37 in it, believe it or not. Click OK. So there's the actual answer. It's 45 hours. And it does throw people at first when that happens. By the way, when it comes to times are actually portions of a day. And when we look at a time like this, even though you don't see what's behind the scenes, if you were to press on the Home tab, for example, the comma button, that's actually 0.09, or you could say 9% of the day, 2 hours in. And so times actually are recorded as percentages of the day, or a portion of the day. The unit of measure in the date-time system is 1 equals a single day. We almost never look at these numbers, although occasionally they do appear in calculations if there's a formatting issue. I'm going to press Control-Z here to go backward. One other issue that may throw you, look at the date in cell B12 here, 12/3/30. If you had typed that in, were you thinking 2030 or were you thinking 1930? Well, regardless of what you were thinking, look in the formula bar or double click here. And what are we saying? It's 1930. If you're typing in date entries and you use a 2-digit year, all numbers from 30 through 99 are interpreted in the 20th century. All entries from 0 through 29 are interpreted to be this century. To eliminate any doubt, type 4-digit years. Now, that might be more typing than you want to do. And I think in many, many business situations, much of the time you don't worry about this. But what will happen probably 5 years down the road, 10 years perhaps somewhere, Microsoft will make another executive decision and say, automatically when you type a 2-digit year, and they'll probably bump up this boundary here. Maybe they'll make it from 0 to 39 is this century, and so on. So there might be a change there. Just be very careful when you're putting in dates that might overlap this kind of a time frame. So as we've seen, Excel has the ability to handle date and time math, and we'll see some upcoming functions as well. This is a capability that if you haven't seen it, you owe it to yourself, because there's some real power here, and the ability to analyze data based on date and time information is one that most Excel users will find valuable.